For 15 years, the world watched as two giants quietly transformed global power, America defending its economic crown, and China vaulting past Japan in 2010 and unveiling ambitions like the Belt and Road. The official story is a tale of trade and tech rivalry, but what if tariffs and accusations were only the surface? At stake are trillions in trade, lost livelihoods, and the race to decide who shapes tomorrow. Did American pressure slow China's rise, or did it fuel an unintended revolution? The answer begins where their silent battle erupted into open confrontation. By 2010, China's economy was expanding at a pace that left much of the world scrambling to keep up. Factories in Guangdong and Jiangsu ran day and night, feeding a global appetite for electronics, machinery, and consumer goods. In that same year, China overtook Japan to become the world's second largest economy. The milestone sent a clear signal to policymakers in Washington. The United States responded with a new strategy. In 2011, the Obama administration announced the pivot to Asia, redirecting diplomatic, military, and economic focus to the Pacific. Soon after, American negotiators began shaping the Trans-Pacific Partnership, aiming to set new trade rules without China at the table. Meanwhile, Beijing looked outward. The Belt and Road Initiative, launched in the middle of the decade, promised hundreds of billions for roads, ports, and railways across Asia, Africa, and beyond. This was not just infrastructure, it was a blueprint for global influence, backed by state banks and construction giants. But economic strength brought leverage, and it brought friction. Between 2010 and 2012, China imposed export quotas on rare earth minerals, controlling materials critical for everything from smartphones to missile guidance systems. The move triggered a challenge at the World Trade Organization. In 2012, the World Trade Organization ruled against China, finding the quotas illegal under global trade rules. Each move and countermove revealed a widening gulf. Economic growth, global projects, and resource controls were no longer just national policies. They were tools in a contest where every decision rippled across continents. January 2018 brought the first blows. The United States announced tariffs on solar panels and washing machines, drawing a sharp line on imports worth billions. By March, steel and aluminum followed, with 25% and 10% duties, sweeping through global supply chains and hitting allies and rivals alike. In April, the White House invoked Section 301, targeting $50 billion in Chinese goods over alleged intellectual property violations. The policy drumbeat grew louder. By late 2018, tariffs covered $250 billion worth of imports from China, with rates climbing as high as 25% on thousands of products. China struck back, zeroing in on American agriculture. Soybeans, once the top United States export to China, now carried steep retaliatory tariffs. In the Midwest, the impact was immediate. For one Illinois farmer, decades of steady sales vanished almost overnight. Shipments stalled, prices fell. The USDA estimated billions in lost exports nationwide, with farm incomes dropping to their lowest levels in more than a decade. Equipment sat idle in fields as uncertainty replaced routine. By January 2020, exhaustion set in on both sides. The United States and China signed the Phase 1 agreement, pausing further escalation. China pledged to increase purchases of American farm goods, and some tariffs eased. But the scars remained. For farmers across the heartland, the deal brought relief, but not a return to normal. The trade war had left its mark on balance sheets. on futures markets, and on the daily reality of those who fed the world. On May 15, 2019, the U.S. Commerce Department placed Huawei on the Entity List, cutting off the Chinese tech giant from American semiconductors, software, and key components. The official notice ran in the Federal Register, making clear that national security concerns would now drive export policy. This was no longer about broad tariffs or commodity trade. Instead, Washington aimed straight at the heart of China's technological ambitions, blocking access to the chips and design tools needed for advanced smartphones, 5G networks, and AI systems. The strategy sharpened in 2022. Congress passed the CHIPS and Science Act, pledging $52 billion to rebuild semiconductor manufacturing on American soil. The law offered subsidies for new fabrication plants, research, and workforce training, with strict conditions to prevent recipients from expanding advanced chip production in China. The act's fine print spelled out a new industrial policy: secure the supply chain, outpace foreign rivals, and keep critical technology at home. That same year, the Biden administration tightened export controls even further. New Commerce Department rules barred the sale of advanced chips and chip-making equipment to Chinese firms, targeting not just finished products, but the machinery and software behind them. These controls extended to AI processors, supercomputing clusters, and the tools needed to design next-generation circuits. American companies faced strict licensing requirements, and global partners were pressed to align with the new restrictions. For the first time, U.S. policy moved beyond tariffs and market access. The focus turned to denial, preserving a technological edge by limiting what China could buy, build, or learn. Each measure carried its own risks, but the calculation in Washington was clear. In the race for the future, control over technology mattered more than the flow of goods. In a glass-walled lab in Shenzhen, a young engineer named Li adjusted the cooling pipes snaking around a cluster of AI servers. The air hummed with the sound of machines, but the real pressure came from outside. Washington's latest export bans had just landed. Overnight, the most advanced chips and software tools were out of reach. For Li and her team, the challenge was no longer just building faster models, but building them with what they had. Instead of slowing down, China's tech sector shifted gears and learned to adapt. Domestic chip makers like SMIC and Huawei's Ascend ramped up production, filling gaps left by U.S. suppliers. Open-source software communities sprang to life, sharing code and workarounds. Investment in research and development soared, with government grants and venture capital flooding AI, robotics, and battery startups. Factories in the Pearl River Delta retooled for electric vehicles and smart manufacturing, pushing China's share of the global electric vehicle market past 60% by 2025. The breakthrough came with DeepSeek R1, a 671 billion parameter mixture of experts model, trained not on the banned H100 GPUs, but on 2,000 NVIDIA H800 GPUs that skirted export controls. DeepSeek's team used a leaner approach, with only 37 billion parameters activated at a time, slashing compute costs to a fraction of Western rivals. The model handled complex math, coding, and long context reasoning, rivaling leading U.S. systems on Chinese and global benchmarks. For engineers like Li, the message was clear. Containment was not a dead end. It was a detour. Each new restriction pushed China's tech ecosystem to adapt and to innovate with fewer resources, closing a gap that once seemed unbridgeable. The contest became not just about access, but about efficiency, scale, and the ability to turn adversity into advantage. On February 1st, 2025, the White House announced a sweeping 10% duty on all Chinese imports. Within weeks, the numbers climbed. By early April, tariffs on Chinese goods reached a staggering 145%. China answered in kind, raising its own tariffs on American products to 125%. Each proclamation landed like a shockwave through global markets. Trade flows slowed, and cargo ships idled at ports, waiting for new instructions. At the same time, Beijing tightened its grip on critical resources, restricting exports of 6 heavy rare earth elements and rare earth magnets, materials essential for electronics, defense, and clean energy. Notices posted by China's Ministry of Commerce warned of immediate export controls, amplifying the uncertainty. The world's 2 largest economies had locked themselves into a spiral, with each new measure raising the cost of disengagement. For manufacturers, farmers, and tech firms on both sides, the risks had never been higher. After months of relentless escalation, negotiators met in Busan and reached a fragile understanding. The agreement slashed tariffs from their dizzying heights, down to a range between 10 and 30%. Customs offices released statements confirming the new rates, and global markets breathed a tentative sigh of relief. Yet beneath the headlines, the economic landscape had already shifted. Chinese customs data revealed a record trade surplus, surpassing $1 trillion for the first time. While the United States had aimed to pressure Beijing, the reality was more complex. Chinese exports had simply found new destinations, and trade with Africa, Latin America, and BRICS nations surged, powered by infrastructure built over the past decade. From the perspective of a BRICS trade official, the world was no longer defined by a single axis. The Busan truce offered a pause, but the old order was gone, replaced by a web of new connections and unintended consequences. Today, every device, job, and alliance is shaped by this rivalry. As tariffs ebb and tech walls rise, a multipolar world redraws the rules. Supply chains fracture, prices climb, and influence tilts. The next global shift is not coming. It is already here. Share your thoughts below.